So we've talked about form view and list view and mentioned table view. Let's talk a little bit more about table view. Table view is the third choice here, or the choice here, and looks a lot like a spreadsheet. So it's really more akin to a list view than a form view, so it makes more sense usually to look at a table view and a list view. They would be the same type of layout, although I generally make a layout and keep it in the same view as. It's more akin to a list view, so it makes more sense to look at a table view from a list view layout. So we'll look at it from here. So we'll go to View as Table, and it looks a lot like a spreadsheet. Now I generally don't like table view because I don't have as much control over the interface as I do with the list view. So I generally don't include them, but a lot of people like them for these reasons. You can sort just by clicking on the header. You can come up here and rearrange the fields. You can resize the fields if you want, just like a spreadsheet. In fact, with FileMaker Pro 10 and FileMaker Pro 10 Advanced, you have this modify option. And this allows you to take fields on and off. Notice that these ones are locked right here. That's because these are the fields that the developer put on the layout. This modify option is available to people who don't have access to layout mode. They might, but that's generally the idea, is that people can come in here and modify their table view this way. So the fields that the developer put on the layout certainly can be not shown on there, just like that. You saw the state field go away, but they can't be removed. You can't delete them. But you certainly can add another field if you want. So they can come in here and add the company field if they want. It won't have that trash can there because we can delete it. It won't have that lock there. We can delete it off there, as well as not show it. So this is an interesting little feature for table view. It gives people more control over the table view, which is really naturally the idea behind it. It's a more controllable view than list view or form view. You can rearrange the columns and things like that. So this is a natural feature of this. So let's click OK. Again, notice when we go to layout mode, the company field is not there. It has not been added on there. But what I do want to show you is some of the options for table view. We can go into Layout menu and choose Layout Setup. You'll be going to Layout Setup a lot. We're going to skip a lot of the stuff, and we're going to go right to Views. And you'll notice that we have the available views: Form, List, and Table. And there's little check boxes. If I uncheck that, that means that this particular layout that we're on cannot be changed to a form view. In other words, the View menu, it will have that option dimmed out. But I generally don't do this because I usually make a layout for just one mode, and I actually dim out the menus through accounts and privileges and custom menus. I don't usually do it this way, but this is a quick way without getting involved in accounts and privileges to dim this option out for people. It's up to you. I still recommend accounts and privileges, but it's here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into table view. And you notice you have a lot of control over what happens. We can change the grids. We can do horizontal and vertical, and we can change the grid style and the color. So fiddle around with this stuff. It's pretty interesting how much control you have over the way the look and feel. You can't really do as much as you'll see with list view that I think you can as far as putting graphics and things on there, but you do have some good control here. You can include a header and a footer part. Notice that our list view wording didn't show up when we looked at it previously, but if we check that, it would show up then. And that's important to notice another difference between form view and list view. You notice when you scroll in list view that the header stays in place, and so would the footer. But in form view, it just doesn't really act the same way because you're not looking at multiple records. So you have a lot of options here. Resizable columns, you can tell them they can't do that if you don't want that. Sort data when selecting the column. Do you want to be able to reorder the columns? Those are all by default. And you can have custom heights for the rows if you want. So there's all kinds of things you can change here. In fact, you can specify in pixels and other options. So I'm not going to change any of these options here, but I want you to know that they're there. And again, they'll display once you go into browse mode, but only when you have table view selected. So I'm going to switch this back to list view because it's really my preferable option. As I was saying, notice how the list view, the header just stays right there. If we go over to our form view, you really don't see that there's a header there. It's there. It's right in there because we haven't typed anything, but it really wouldn't react any differently. You wouldn't see it react as you do in list view where it just stays in place. It's a different way. So you're going to realize how all these parts interact with list view, with browse mode, with table view, and even when you're printing or previewing, it reacts differently. So you've got to get this all inside your head, and the only way you can do that is by fiddling around with it, getting that experience with FileMaker. So fiddle as much as you can, and remember to build what we're doing here. Don't just watch these videos, build what we're talking about, and that will really help with the retention on how these things work and just make you a good FileMaker programmer.